the reason I've asked you to come on is that there's a story that hasn't really been put out there very much, is that the Resist movement that you're part of and founded, that is merging with the Socialist Labour Party, which is led by Arthur Scargill. So many people who were Labour members or were part of Jeremy Corbyn's movement feel homeless. So do you want to tell us why you've made this decision, why Resist has made this decision, and why you think it's a good idea to merge?
Yeah, I mean, there was an overwhelming vote of our members to join forces with the Socialist Labour Party. And yes, it's been around since 1996. It's an unambiguously anti-capitalist political party. And you know, when Jeremy was elected as the leader of the party, I think a lot of people hoped that we would be able to create a Socialist Labour Party with the existing Labour Party. And that wasn't possible. And no end of people have said to me, what we need is a Socialist Labour Party. And we have a Socialist Labour Party. It's been around since 1996. And I think having the name Labour in the title is helpful. I mean, the Labour Party, the official Labour Party, is very little different, really, to the Conservative Party. It's a pro-war party, pro-neoliberal party. I mean, it's, you know, people talk about the horseshoe theory. Well, there it is. I mean, it's there. Labour and the Tory, you know, are the flip side of the same coin. And in spite of the fact that Labour isn't really offering anything that much different to what the Tories are proposing, they are riding high in the opinion polls at the moment, because I think people feel that there isn't really any other alternative. People look to Labour Party, don't they? They look to Labour, think Labour's the natural alternative to the Conservatives. And obviously when Jeremy was the leader, the establishment freaked out because you know, we were offering a genuine alternative, a socialist, anti-imperialist alternative, and that was something that was unconscionable. And they, as we know, did everything in their power to stop that from happening. And without, you know, rehearsing all the mistakes that were made in actually responding to that, we are where we are now. And I just think, and members of Resist feel that moving to join forces with the Socialist Labour Party offers us an opportunity to provide an alternative to the wider general public that is kind of familiar in terms of its name, but is actually a genuine alternative. I mean, and the reason why the Socialist Labour Party was established in the first place was not just a reaction directly to Blair, but the fact that Blair succeeded in getting rid of Clause 4 and that historic commitment to replacing capitalism. And that was the main reason why the Socialist Labour Party was founded. But I don't think the time was quite right then. Many people, including myself, still felt that there was a future for the Labour Party, that if we stuck with the Labour Party, if we built its membership, created that mass movement, maybe got a left-wing leader elected, if we could get sufficient numbers of members into the party to make that happen, then we could bring about the fundamental change that the vast majority of people, I think, that supported the Labour Party still want to see. And then we saw that just wasn't possible within the Labour Party. And yet, Crispin, people are still hankering after some, you know, phony proposition that maybe one day we might be able to regain the Labour Party. The truth is, we've never actually held sway in the Labour Party. The right wing, the establishment, have always dominated the Labour Party, certainly for the last 100 years or so. And when I think we're in a historic moment now, a moment that's very similar to 1900 when the Labour Party was founded. The Liberal Party was seen then as a natural sort of alternative to the Conservatives, but people recognised that it wasn't really an alternative. That's where we're at now. You know, the Labour Party has been colonised by neoliberals, by warmongers, by, you know, corporate capitalists, and you've got to break out of that. And I just think the Socialist Labour Party gives us a chance to do that. And, you know, it's a small entity at the moment, as is the Resist movement. But there is a lot of desire, isn't there, for an alternative? We see, is it 500,000 people have registered their support for the Enough is Enough campaign. But the point is, what do we do when the election comes? What is enough going to say in relation to that political choice that people need to make? Are they seriously going to, are trade unions seriously going to tell people to vote Labour, when Labour is just going to be a continuation of the status quo? I mean, all the things that we've been talking about on the show today, you know, particularly in relation to Julian Assange. I think Julian Assange's fate would be any different with Sir Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister. Let's remember, he was Director of Public Prosecutions that bent over backwards to prevent Sweden dropping the extradition efforts that they were making on the bogus charges that were being levelled against Julian at the time. So there is no alternative in the mainstream political parties. And we just need to be confident in ourselves. And I just urge people to join the Socialist Labour Party and help us to build it. If we do that, you know, then I think we've got a chance of cutting through.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people who are homeless politically, but there's this kind of there's people who are sort of suggesting, like you say, that Labour's movable, that the policies that Starmer said in his speech, which we've found out is not nationalisation of any sort, really, or public ownership of any sort, that you know, that means he's listening to us. And there are MPs there are MPs in the Socialist campaign group who we identify with in many ways with what they say about the society they want to create, but they're in this party that is holding back discussions on policy or expelling people who block vote. Everyone's ducking, worried about whether they'll be expelled next, or what they can say, or what petition they can sign, or whatever it is. It's just a chaotic. The left is in a kind of chaotic situation where we're having some people say Labour's able to do it, and then you're so bold. You're kind of like, well, I'm just going for this party, and come and join us. I mean, and everyone's like, oh, I don't know. It's a bit like there's a party going on, and they're not sure if it's got the right music. I mean,
Yes, indeed.
What is it that people need to be persuaded to actually jump away from believing in Labour? I don't get it. There's some missing bit, isn't there?
Well, I mean, I think we're being badly let down, Crispin, by the sort of leadership, in inverted commas, of the so-called left. And when I say that, I'm talking about the so-called Socialist campaign group of Labour MPs. I'm talking about the trade union leadership. Why is any self-respecting trade union leader still associated with and urging its members to continue to support and bankroll this phony political party, this Labour Party, which is working against the interests of trade union members? We might get a few crumbs from the table, but ultimately they're serving the interest of corporate capitalism. Labour is serving the interests of the war machine. It's serving the interests of the United States of America. It's serving the interests of the Zionist state of Israel. It isn't serving the interests of working class people in this country. I mean, what are Labour councils doing now? Labour councils have the powers at their disposal right now, Crispin, to actually stop the cuts, to actually address the housing crisis. They have powers to do that now. They're not doing it. We have a housing crisis in our country. What are Labour councils doing? They're not addressing that at all. Not a single one of them. I mean, people talk about Preston, and that's great, and they're talking about using the power of public procurement and so on to support the local economy. And that's the bare minimum what they should be doing. Are there homeless people in Preston? Yes, there are. Why? There shouldn't be, because local authorities have the power now to engage in a municipalisation programme, to acquire properties on the open market, to actually start to build homes. I know that takes a bit of time, but whilst you wait to train people up and actually getting the construction underway, acquiring the land and so on and so forth, they could be acquiring properties on the open market. There are homes for sale in Preston, aren't there? Homes for sale all over the country. Why aren't local authorities intervening in the market with the powers that they have at their disposal right now to start acquiring properties, to start housing people? They're not doing it. Absolutely outrageous. And not using the powers at their disposal to introduce a redistributive council tax, something that I've been arguing for, you know, since I was on the front bench. Indeed, that's why I stepped down from the front bench at the beginning of 2018, because there was opposition, even under Jeremy's leadership, I don't think Jeremy was particularly opposed to it, but the local government front bench were opposed to the idea that we should ask rich people in each local authority area to pay a lot more in order to stop the cuts and actually freeze council tax, or maybe even reduce it, depending on how many properties you've got in the higher council tax bands. To create a better society. My view, and when I sort of spoke to journalists about it, they were saying, well, this is Corbynomics. Corbynomics at a local level. And yet not a solitary local authority picked that up. Not a solitary local authority is doing anything about housing, about homelessness. It's just unacceptable. And, when local authorities in the past, like Liverpool, used the powers at their disposal to address the housing crisis that they were confronted with, they did it, and then they were demonised. I mean, we had one of the Liverpool councillors speaking at the event that Resist organised at the start of the Labour Party conference to announce the start of the move towards the Socialist Labour Party. And she was saying, Felicity Dowling, I think her name was. Oh, yeah. Felicity is certainly a surname. I'm not sure if I got her surname correctly. But she spoke about how before they were elected, they weren't sure they were going to win, but they were going around, they were campaigning. She said they went onto this one estate where the soil pipes were broken, the homes were just in a terrible state, local authority homes, and people were saying to them, well, can you give us an absolute cast iron commitment that you'll, do the repairs if you get elected? And she said, no, we won't do the repairs. What we're going to do is we will demolish this and rebuild proper, good quality, decent homes for people. And she said within 18 months, they'd done it, Crispin, they'd done that. That militant local authority, which was infamously demonised by Kinnock, I think they built 5,000 or 6,000 council houses and did many other excellent, innovative things. What they did is they used the powers at their disposal to bring about municipal socialism. And I've always said, if you've got a political platform, if you've got political power, then you should use that to try and make a difference. Not just to feather your own nest, not just to advance your own career, which regrettably, it seems to me, people who are in these senior positions, that's what they prioritise. Why haven't the Socialist Campaign Group said, we're resigning the whip? I mean, they should have done that within 24 hours when Keir Starmer refused to restore the whip to Jeremy. Frankly, they should have done it for people like Ken Livingstone. They should have done it for me. They should have done it for people like Jackie Walker and Tony Greenstein and others. I mean, this was at the time of Jeremy Corbyn, but they just kept their heads down. And we've been badly let down, therefore, by the Socialist Campaign Group, by the trade union leadership. And I urge people, don't look to them. Don't look to them. Look to yourselves. That's what Jeremy argued, isn't it, at the start of his leadership? And I always used to say on the Democracy Roadshow, there are two banned words in Jeremy's vocabulary, and it's I and me. It's not about I and me. It's about us and we. And that's, key, it seems to me. We've got a chance, Crispin, to do something, but we've got to have the courage of our own convictions. That's what that's what our forefathers did, isn't it? The great Labour movement pioneers, they did it themselves, and that's what we need to do.
Well, I was talking earlier to someone about the Labour Party is like a vehicle that's got no wheels on it and no gear, but it's got a body, and it's got a windscreen, and there's some people saying we can still get this to work. We can still get it to work.
How though? I mean,
I think that's what there's a kind of denial. There's it's a process that's taking a bit longer than I thought. We know Jeremy Corbyn was sabotaged. We know they sabotaged him. We all joined for Jeremy Corbyn. Loads of people joined for Jeremy Corbyn. We all believed in the manifesto. We all worked hard. Then we started to see that they were actually undermining him, and then they took him out. I mean, they actually suspended him, and then they took the whip away from him. And then people are still thinking, well, you never know. He could be all right. He could get back in. We never know.
This is an abuse. It's an abusive relationship that people are in, and we need to break out of that and create something better. It's not going to be easy, of course. Everything's against us in terms of the mainstream media, the establishment. I mean, just the conspiracy of silence in relation to the outrageous treatment of Julian Assange. I mean, Crispin, I was about the only MP that was speaking up for Julian when I was in the House of Commons. Where were they? Where were all these other MPs? You know, I mean, thankfully some of them are speaking up now, but the vast majority of them aren't. This is an international outrage happening in Britain. I mean, God Almighty, it's just unbelievable, frankly. You know, and obviously I'm going to be there on Saturday for Julian, and I hope everybody else is. You know, you've been doing your best to urge people to be there, but you know, all of these things, you know, they're not going to be solved through the Labour Party. Foreign policy, domestic policy, you know, it's just that there's like very little difference between Tories and Labour. If people want change, we're going to have to make that change ourselves. And I think that the Socialist Labour Party gives us a chance of achieving that. As I say, it's got a familiar name with the wider general public, and therefore I think would enable us to cut through a bit more easily than a completely different name. And you know, the left just needs to get real. I mean, and come together. I mean, and you mentioned all those other political parties. I've worked with all of them. I campaigned for George Galloway in the Batley and Spen by-election. I think it's important that we, you know, that we do collaborate. And you know, maybe the Socialist Labour Party isn't the you know, the finished item. It certainly isn't yet. Maybe there will be a better, different vehicle might emerge, but there isn't one at the moment. And I think the Socialist Labour Party gives us the best chance of creating that vehicle that has the chance of challenging the political status quo. But it can only do that if people, you know, abandon the Labour Party and instead of putting all that energy into trying to win the odd vote at the National Executive Committee, or get, you know, a left-winger here and there elected onto. I mean, look what's happened to Naomi Winborn and Jesse. You know, I mean, almost inevitable. We could have predicted that was what was going to happen. But all that effort that went into that, what is the point of it? Crispin, what is the point?
I find that NEC thing. I mean, there's no way that even if they got all the slate left, that all the parliamentary representatives on the NEC plus the other unions that have been. That don't, I don't know what they're up to, but anyway, they just vote out anything that the left did anyway. So it does seem like a bit of it's sort of like we've got more than Luke Akehurst got, or something like that. It's like,
oh yeah, exactly.
What's the point?
You know, at the end of the day, is it all about, you know, winning a few internal background? I mean, I used to talk about parliamentary parlour games, you know, the obsession of the parliamentary Labour Party with the intricacies of you know, the parliamentary warfare that goes on. I'm not saying that's entirely unimportant, but a lot of it is completely a waste of time. But they're obsessed with that, and it seems a lot of the people in the Labour Party are obsessed with, you know, internal battles. Meanwhile, we've got hundreds of thousands of people, you know, homeless. We've got millions of people in precarious employment. You know, we've got a war going on. The potential for the Third World War to escalate, you know, with what's happening in Ukraine, with this ridiculous proxy war that should never have started. And we're focused on this internal nonsense in the Labour Party.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not speaking to the real issues that's going on in the world. It's certainly not speaking to the lived experiences of working class communities up and down this country who've been utterly shafted for the last 40 or 50 years. And you know, I just think that there is the potential there to do something, and I just hope that people will, you know, reflect on if they're still stuck with the Labour Party, or if they're homeless and they're wondering where to go. You know, give the Socialist Labour Party a try. You know, I mean, if people are interested, they can email me. We need to look. I mean, you know, the infrastructure of the Socialist Labour Party, you know, needs to be improved. Certainly, its website, you know, is not what it should be at the moment. So it's difficult, I think, to kind of join online at the moment. So if anybody is interested in joining, they can email me. My email address is darbyvegan@gmail.com. That's Darby, D-E-R-B-Y, vegan, V-E-G-A-N, darbyvegan@gmail.com. And I'll pass on anybody who's interested in helping us to build the Socialist Labour Party, and let's see what we can do. You know, the only way's up, comrade, it seems to be.
Yeah, I just want thank you for coming on. It just reminded me of the time when seeing that Al Jazeera documentary, that time when you were going to speak in Brighton at the conference with Tosh about the Democracy Roadshow, and they tried to pull the event by saying that there was these anti-Semites who were speaking at this event.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, it was.
I had to say, sorry, no, he's not on the bill. I didn't know he was an anti-Semite. I didn't know he was.
No,
But then,
no, indeed,
but then on the night when it came to it, I did a little slide trick because I got you on the guest list as I thought, because you're Derby man. I put Roy McFarlane as your fake name, and you came in, and then at the end of the show, I said, "Oh look, Chris Williamson's at the back of the hall. Who wants to hear Chris speak?" And everyone went, "Yay!" And then you came up on the stage. I mean, how ridiculous it was with that kind of the guy that was identified. I'm not going to name names, but someone identified him as a bit of a bully to people, intimidating them. I mean, in the Brighton area, that was happening so much, wasn't it, with you? I mean,
very much so. Yeah, I mean, you know, I can't speak on a university campus even to this day. I mean, Crispin, I was due to speak at the Oxford Union, I think it was earlier this year or back end of last year, about veganism, and I got cancelled from that, you know, because there's this ongoing cancel culture campaign that's, you know, pushed by the Zionist lobby in particular, Union of Jewish Students, and just can't get a platform. I mean, you know, prior to that meeting that you spoke about there, that was incredibly heartwarming. I wasn't sure what reception I was going to receive because I wasn't on the bill and thought there might be some haters in there who would, you know, boo and throw things at the stage. But it was like an incredibly moving, overwhelming support. And that's been my experience, you know, throughout really. The support from grassroots members has been incredible. But a month or two before that, I was due to speak about modern monetary theory in Brighton. We got several venues got cancelled. The Holiday Inn was cancelled. In fact, there was a believe it or not, a worldwide boycott was threatened against the Holiday Inn if they allowed me to speak at that at their hotel in Brighton. And in the end, we had to hold the meeting outside. The police warned me. They said they can't guarantee my safety if I speak. I mean, nothing happened in the end, you know, and I was determined to speak anyway. But I mean, what have we come to? And things have only kind of got worse since then, of course, you know. And a lot of this, I think, you know, I blame the leadership of the party for not actually defending people, for not standing up and fighting back against these bad faith actors. Because we know that the whole anti-Semitism crisis was manufactured to destroy Jeremy Corbyn. It was a convenient stick that the right wing seized upon because Jeremy was constantly being advised to apologise and continue to give ground, and something I continually argued that he shouldn't be doing. Pressed this Socialist campaign group to make a stand, but they wouldn't do that. Again, I was the only MP that was prepared to speak out against the concocted anti-Semitism smears that were being thrown around. And, you know, because of that, it gained strength, which I predicted it would do. And, you know, where we are, it's only kind of got worse. I mean, it hasn't stopped. I mean, academics are losing their livelihoods now. People are being, you know, losing jobs in education, and people are being smeared all over the place as a result of the ongoing anti-Semitism smear campaign, which is just not stopped.
But that, I mean, that Al Jazeera documentary, I mean, it's obviously not being covered by the media, but you're a real example of someone who's been really smeared by bad faith actors. I mean, the fact that you can't speak at university events, and then on your Twitter, have you still got that thing about?
Yes, I've now been. I mean, that's because I host a program. It's on Press. It's hosted by Press TV, but it's Palestine Declassified. It's a program about trying to, you know, Palestinian liberation and the kind of global war that's waged by you know, the Zionist lobby against solidarity with the illegally occupied people of Palestine. And for that, I've been labelled Iran state-affiliated media. I mean, people that work for the BBC don't get British state-affiliated media, or, you know, I mean, again, it's all about trying to delegitimize and silence you know, alternative voices, really. And ever since that,
like a few years ago, you were just like going into your constituency office doing some surgeries, helping people out with their landlords and whatever. And now you're officially, you're meant to be a state agent for the Iranians, and some kind of no platform anti-Semite. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I think what's happened with that documentary is it's turning, the tide's turning, and I think you'll be the hero. You'll become the hero rather than the villain. And I mean, I've seen in myself that Ken Livingstone is not in a good way at all, and you as well as Ken have been treated terribly. And I think everyone on this call is showing solidarity, and there may well be people who will join up with you in the Socialist Labour Party because of your integrity.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, and it was a great support from grassroots members that kind of kept me going, because I was in a dark place, I've got to say, when I was kicked out of the, well, I didn't get kicked, I was suspended, and then I left. But when I was first suspended, it was very difficult. But people were incredibly generous, and that solidarity, it means a lot. But there are people in the so-called, as I call them, the optics left. I've got a lot to answer for, because they joined in the smears, and that gave them more credibility. And I think some of them are waking up to the fact that they were wrong. But they need to apologise to people like Ken Livingstone and Jackie Walker, myself even for that matter, Tony Greenstein, Cyril Chilson, and the thousands of others. But I mean, there's so many people too many to name. Despicable what they did to people. It really was. And I still see people now. People are still being suspended and accused of anti-Semitism, and it has a profound effect on people. It really does. And people have suffered terribly. Their mental health and so on, and also have lost, as I've already pointed out. People like David Miller. He's not the only one. Have lost their livelihoods. I mean, it goes beyond the kind of political entity. They literally want to utterly crush people into the dirt.
Yeah.
I mean, the Al Jazeera documentary was incredibly revealing, but also, could have said a lot more than it actually did. But I think it was in the Al Jazeera documentary where when somebody, it was suspected, had taken their lives, or at least they died. Sorry,
yeah.
And it was put on, but then they were joking about that. Yeah. Now we're killing anti-Semites or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are sick. I mean, what are those people doing within 1 million miles of the so-called Labour Party? I mean, people still want to have some association with this organisation. I mean, it's as Greg Hadfield said, it's a criminal conspiracy against its members. It's an evil entity, actually. And it's anyway.
We're all. I think that's everyone who's here. Is still nearly 200 people here, even though we're half an hour over. I think people support you very much on all this, and I appreciate you coming on to the show.
Appreciate it.
So
Thank you.
honestly, thank you, Chris.